Good. And I think we are just live, probably. Good. So we are live now. Hi, welcome Isa, welcome Stian. Thank you for joining us for this short conversation about the civil society in Norway. Just like a short introduction for the people who are watching on our webpage, on our Facebook page. This is part of the Fund for Bilateral Relations, which is another, let's say, component of the Active Citizens Fund Romania, which addresses the strengthening of bilateral relations between Romanian organizations and the donor state organizations, that is Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. And we will have like several discussions like this live, also with Iceland, for example, so that, you know, we can better understand the context in which the donor state countries are at with the civil society sector, because of course there are some differences and we would like to address them as good as possible in our projects and in our program, of course. So before like we go after we go further, can I ask you just like because I don't want to introduce myself, you, so I would like to ask you to introduce yourselves. It's like much better and much more easier. So Isa, you can go first.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. It's very nice to be here. My name is Isa. I'm the president for the Norwegian Children and Youth Council. So we're kind of an umbrella organization for children and youth organizations in Norway, including everything from youth parties to the scouts to various cultural organizations and also religious organizations. So that's basically us, yeah.
Cool, thank you very much. And Stian, which is also from our official partner from the program, Frivillighet Norge.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Stian, and I am the Secretary General of Frivillighet Norge. Our English name is the Association of NGOs in Norway. So we are also an umbrella organization. We represent all kinds of voluntary organizations in Norway, both the children and youth organizations, culture, sports, humanitarian organizations, religious groups, any kind of NGO that is in any way based on volunteers, members, or donations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And because you talked about volunteer and donations and, you know, the civil society sector in general, each time we had the conversation with, like from the beginning, we also were managing the previous fund for AA grants and Norway grants. And since then, we were always, you know, a bit surprised, let's say, about the history of the civil society in Norway, because, like, you know, maybe we had a more difficult political regime in our country, and the civil society sector was not as, let's say, democratic as it should be. And it's quite interesting to find out a little bit more about the context in which the civil society sector developed in Norway. If you can tell us a little bit more about that, Stian.
Yeah, sure. Voluntary organizations in Norway have quite a long history. Of course, it depends on what you consider to be an organization, but the first formal associations that we could compare to current day voluntary organizations were established 150 to 200 years ago. So that's quite a long time. They have developed since, of course, in close connection to how the state, the Norwegian society in general, has developed. Some of the first organizations were actually organizations that were connected to the use of nature as recreation. So the Norwegian Tourist Association is more than 150 years old, one of the oldest organizations. When we changed from the 1800s to the 1900s, we had a lot of big social movements that were about promoting change in society. We had the movement for the women's right to vote. We had movements working against the fight against alcohol. We had movements for the workers' rights and also religious movements that were alternatives to the state religion. So the civil society developed, I would say, in this period as more or less an alternative or an opposition to the official state, but also the state was not capable of providing welfare to all groups in society. So we had a lot of organizations that also started to develop welfare services. And some of the examples are the education for nurses in Norway was established by voluntary organizations. That healthcare for mothers that newly had children, maternal care was established by voluntary organizations. So a lot of the services that we now consider part of our welfare state actually originated from the voluntary sector. And then fast forward several more years after the Second World War, we had some new developments where we rebuilt the state, the welfare state. People then also started to focus more on activities like sports and cultural leisure time activities, which is now actually the largest part of the voluntary sector in Norway, because a lot of the services, like I mentioned, that were initially started by voluntary organizations are not longer run by organizations but by the state. Some are still run by organizations, but the main responsible entity is now the national state or the municipalities. We also had, of course, in this period, a huge growth in children and youth organizations, which Isa can say a lot more about. Organizations for different patient groups have also become important in this period. Yeah, so we have a long history where civil society has developed in close connection with how the welfare state has developed.
But regarding that, like historically, when did the state actually managed to take over the services from the NGOs? Like, in what period was that?
Well, it's happened gradually, and it still happens in some areas. So yeah, it really depends. I mean, like I mentioned, the education for nurses was really early made a public service, although there's still education institutions that are run by non-governmental organizations. So they haven't completely taken over. Some other examples, the care for the maternal care was, I believe, developed in the first 20-30 years of the previous century, so the 20th century. But then it was really becoming a part of the public services in the build-up period after the Second World War. Then we have another example. In the 70s, the 1970s, NGOs developed what we call in Norway krisesenter. It's a center for women that experience abuse, domestic abuse, for instance. They were run by voluntary organizations based on volunteers. Now they have become something that every municipality has to have. Some are still run by voluntary organizations. Some are, I think, run by the municipalities, but they have to provide this service. And this was something that, yeah, it happened in the 70s. Yeah, so this has happened at several different times.
But like, do you, I mean, of course, I don't think it's a general context, but do you know, like, how did that happen? I mean, how did the services transfer to basically to the state, to the welfare state?
Well, usually I think it happened as part of an understanding between the organizations and the public sector. The organizations have usually been interested in promoting the rights of different people in different situations, vulnerable situations, and to secure that their rights are met by the public sector. So the fight has been to get the public sector to take responsibility for if it's people with disabilities or people that have been abused, or etc. And it has not been a fight that the NGO should be the one that should do this. I think there is maybe usually an acceptance that in many parts of the country it has to be the public sector, because we want the rights to be fulfilled in an equal way all across society. So and most importantly, that these should be rights that should grant you some level of care that is universal and that's not dependent upon whether or not there is an NGO in your neighborhood or a rich person in your neighborhood that can provide you with some kind of donation or gift. It's something that should be equal for everybody.
Yeah, it's like this. I put this question because in my opinion, we are sort of like at the third step that you mentioned. So like NGOs are more or less in Romania an alternative to the state. So we are at that point in history, in your history, let's say, and in our history. And I think it could be interesting and valuable for Romanian organization to understand that this happened also in Norway. And actually they could learn from the good practices that several organizations had in developing the services and passing them on to the state. So that could be one point of, you know, possible cooperation, let's say, and possible learning from Norwegian organizations in that sense.
Definitely. Yeah. I just want to also emphasize that, of course, sometimes we don't want to pass on the
of course,
activities.
Yeah, we know. Yeah,
but it depends, because they also change. I mean, once you get the state involved, and the trade-off is, of course, that if the rights are universal, if you succeed in this, then you also are establishing a very strict standard, and that means that there is less room for innovation and creativity.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is not something that is suitable for every kind of activity.
Yeah, true. Isa, what about the youth movement, let's say? How does the youth movement and children's movement fit into this history of NGOs in Norway?
I mean, we're part of it from the very beginning, actually. Like, the youth movement is also quite central part of the kind of people movements that was happening during the 19th century. So you had a youth movement as well. And as Stian also was saying, it's kind of the same kind of history. You also have kind of youth organizations that are first they're trying to change their own situation in society. Then it's more about activities for its own members, like time for leisure. And then it's the minority groups, like people with disabilities and special needs and other minorities. But as for like the Norwegian Children and Youth Council that I'm part of, we actually started out as an organization that was meant to represent Norwegian youth abroad, and that is to say in Europe. So it was actually due to a project regarding European youth in the 1950s that, and we were meant to create a European fellowship or community of a kind among young people in Europe. So that resulted in a kind of umbrella for Norwegian youth, and that was created in 1958. So that was kind of the beginning of the Norwegian Children and Youth Council. But the organization as we know it now was created in 1980, and our purpose today, it's a bit different, because it's mainly to create and work for framework conditions for children and youth organizations in Norway, and that's like within Norway and not necessarily abroad. But interestingly enough, we do still have some youth represented abroad, so we do still elect youth delegates to different agencies in the United Nations, for example, for the climate conference and the UN General Assembly. So we still carry on that tradition, but it's mainly now to, you know, make sure that we do have strong children and youth organizations within Norway. Yeah.
And because you were talking, I mean, with Stian, we were also talking about rights representation and rights protection, and I believe one of your, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that one of your main area of focus, let's say, is rights of children and youth, for sure, but like it's from a representation point of view. Is that correct?
Exactly. Absolutely. And how young people should be able to influence society in general. But I think it's also important to say that it's not only political organizations, but it's also like organizations doing lots of other stuff, and they're not really political, but just, you know, being organized, being together, doing something they're passionate about. So that's also part of it. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely, to influence society, that's mainly our agenda as an umbrella society or organization, I mean. Yeah.
In general. Yeah. And also, like, because we had elections in Romania, local elections in like very few time ago. I was thinking if, like, because you were saying political associations, and in Romania it's quite well debatable, let's say. Young people are more or less, well, for sure, not really engaged into political life. That's, you know, what the studies say. But also we have like this fear, more or less, from young people that, you know, to talk about politics or to understand what politics are. Is that the same thing in Norway?
Not really, no. I mean, in Norway, we do have youth parties. That's kind of organizations that are for young people that are, you know, they're passionate about politics, and also like the different political parties. So you would have like the Labour Party's youth organization, for example. So you'll have that for every political party. You'll have a youth party as well. And I think that the general, you know, idea in Norway is that young people should be passionate about politics, and for our part, I mean, I think it's also about the fact that young people are the only ones knowing how it is to be young today, right? So they're the only ones actually being able to say how society should be for them in their situation. So that's part of it, but also the fact that, I mean, it's the young people today that are going to live in the future, right? So they should also be able to say something about what kind of future they want to live in. And I think that's very important. Like you could see that in the climate movement, for example, that it's very important that young people actually are passionate about that and are actually saying that no to the adults, like, this is our future. You should consider how this is going to look like in 50 years. What are we going to do then if you're continuing doing the politics that you're doing now, for example? So that's an example of young people having very strong opinions about the future and should be listened to. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Because you mentioned the future, I would also like to like address a question to Stian, but also to you, Isa. Like, what would you say that there are some, you know, challenges right now in the civil society sector that, you know, could affect the future if they are not solved or tackled or whatever in the present?
Yeah. So yeah, I think right now we have some really big short-term challenges, at least with the pandemic.
Yeah, sure.
That we are worried that this might have some long-term consequences for civil society that we have to fight against. One is that the organizations, they well, an important characteristic of NGOs in Norway is that they are membership based. So people in Norway are in average members of around 1.8 organizations. So we have around 10 million memberships. And well, why are people members? Well, some are members because they want to support a cause, or some are members because they want to take part in an activity or be a part of some kind of community. And the organizations have, of course, been struggling with all the restrictions and the care we have to take to be responsible within the pandemic situation. So they have not been able to recruit like they usually do. Some have lost members because they have not been able to provide the activities that members expect from them. And since the organizations are so heavily dependent upon their members, both in terms of the membership fees, but also state support that is based upon memberships, we are worried that this could have some long-term consequences for the level of activity in the sector, which is a big challenge. And but also I would add that when we are through the pandemic, we also have to face the same challenges in society that we were already aware of. So we have some social changes in Norway that also affect the NGO sector in different ways. One is that we have an increase in economic inequality. This has some consequences for the participation in different kinds of activities, because many activities are paid for by the participants themselves. And then it becomes a really big problem if a huge part of the population is not able to participate. So this is a long-term challenge both for the society in general, but which also has consequences for the NGO sector. We also have demographic long-term changes going on. We have an aging population like many other European countries. It has consequences for the NGOs. It doesn't have to be a problem because we know that well, it's actually good that people live longer, and that means also that they can stay active and participate in NGOs longer. But it's something that we have to take into our strategies, our plans for the future. Also, we have the question of, I mean, which we haven't seen that much in Norway, I would say still, but we are observing that the polarization of societies around the world, the political debates, and yeah, it challenges democracy. It challenges some values that are important to us as an NGO sector. So it's also something that we have to work with in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you. It's like, because you were saying at the beginning about the membership, and we tackled a little bit some of the, you know, how do you say, dimensions, let's say, of the civil society sector in Norway. One is, yeah, as you were saying, membership. One is like there are a lot of organizations in leisure and sports and culture. What is the quantitative number of NGOs in Norway? Just to have like an impression of the difference or similarity.
Yeah, the researchers say that there are around 100,000 NGOs, and the largest part, of course, is local groups. Some are even quite informal. We have a national register of voluntary organizations, which has between 50 and 60,000 units. Those are the more, well, the formalized ones that are perhaps also more active, more stable. National NGOs, I've seen mentioned the number around 3,500 organizations that are operating in some way on a national level.
So like networks or umbrella organizations, or?
No, they don't have to be that. I mean, it can be an organization that is established in one part of the country, but where the purpose covers the whole nation. So
Okay.
So we have in our organizations, we have 335 member organizations. The estimate is that they together cover 50,000 local groups. So it's very typical for NGOs in Norway to have a national branch, and then they have local units that are connected through statutes and through some kind of fee to the national branch. So in this way we have, for example, the Norwegian Red Cross as a member in my organization, and then they have local branches in every municipality that work with both preparedness and humanitarian needs in the local community. But they're only one member with us, but they have several hundred groups around Norway.
And these groups, they don't necessarily need to be formalized, so they can be also informal groups, right?
They can be informal groups, but if they're part of a national organization, then they will be formalized as part of the national organization.
Okay, good. So Isa, since Stian was telling us, like, of course, the population is aging and we are looking at the future, and looking at the future, whether we like it or not, are the young people there. What would you say are the challenges for the youth movement and the youth sector in Norway at this point?
I mean, just I would like to add to what Stian was saying just now,
Yeah,
that we also
please.
have many of those organizations do have youth wings. For example, Red Cross do have youth wings as well. So they would have a national youth wing unit, and then they would have local chapters as well within the youth wing of the organization. So it could be quite complicated with many many different units within one organization. But yeah, I mean, for the young people in Norway, the past 10 years we've seen many more people actually being members in organizations. So we did have, sadly not, we did have a terror attack in Norway in 2011. It was a terrorist that attacked the Labour Youth Party. And since that time, we've seen many more young people actually being part of organizations since then. So that's been quite interesting to follow these last 10 years. So that's also different from the rest of society, where you see less people actually being within organizations, but for young people there's more, so that's interesting. But of course now with the corona crisis, this could turn completely around, because we see now that we've got less areas to recruit people. I mean, if you can't be at schools where the young people are, if you can't be at arenas where you'll meet potential members, you'll not be able to grow as an organization. So I mean, that's part of the problem. Also the fact that the activities that they would have done this summer with summer camps, or just activities this autumn with different, I mean, meetings and different activities, when they can't do that because of corona, that's a problem. And I think that's, I mean, in particular with youth organizations, and then I mean like organizations that are you know, that young people are actually, when the young people are the leaders and it's not the grown-ups that are doing it, but the young people are doing it, then it's a huge problem, because 1 year is such a long time for a young person. So you can't really, I mean, one lost year can mean a lot, because they won't kind of be able to hand over the knowledge to the next generation within the organization. And we're afraid of that happening right now, that we'll see so much time where nothing is happening, and then what will that organization do when they don't have really anyone to take over the organization? So that's a huge problem for us now because of the corona crisis.
Mm-hmm. Because we were also talking about political involvement, let's say, I'm also curious about local participation, civic participation of young people. And I'm saying that because I know two cases which were quite interesting for me to find out. One was in Sandefjord, where we had at the beginning of this year a matchmaking seminar with Romanian and Norwegian organizations, and another one from one of our projects. And there were at this meeting in Sandefjord, there was this gentleman, which I forgot his name, I'm sorry, but he was managing, or he was in contact with the local youth club. So he was managing the place or whatever. And he was saying that like it actually is a problem for young people to come to the youth clubs and, you know, propose activities or do activities or whatever. So it was a problem, in my opinion, it was a problem there. Is this like, I don't know if it's generalized or not in Norway. I mean, how do the young people actually get involved in youth club or in the youth movement per se, per general?
I mean, it's kind of been a problem. I don't know what kind of youth club that was, but we've had kind of youth clubs that are you know, that are managed by grown-ups, and it's kind of adults saying that young people should be interested in this thing. And I mean, that's nice, but it's not necessarily what the young people want. Or it could be what some want, but not all of them, because that's also important when you talk about young people, that they're different from each other and they like different things, right?
And it's not participation anyway, so.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, for us, it's important that you got, I mean, various kind of activities in different local places, like in Sandefjord, that you can do that young youth club, but you could also participate in one of the youth parties, or you could do this, be scouting, or you could do something entirely else. But it can't be just one kind of thing that young people should do and then that's it, because young people want to do different things, right? So I mean, that's important. Yeah.
So like diversifying the options, basically, that they can have. Yeah. Do you have in your network the I forgot the name, the representative of the youth from the north?
The representative of the youth from the north. I'm not sure. I don't really. Do you have any idea what that is, Stian?
It's
the youth of the north?
Like a little region in the north. I'm really sorry, I forgot the name.
No
but
problem.
It was quite interesting because they were supposed to come at one of our seminars, of our matchmaking seminars, and unfortunately the guy could not come anymore. And I was like, when he was telling us about, and we were talking about the region, they have like a youth assembly in the region that it's like, I mean, without their vote or their, how do you say, their discussion about it. I mean, if they are against something in the general affairs of the region, the affairs are not happening, basically.
Right.
and I was thinking, like, because but I forgot the name, and I was thinking if there are other parts in Norway where this is happening.
But that is actually a kind of thing, that you do have kind of youth assemblies that are meeting and are participating in like local politics. So you'll have that in different towns, and that's young people, and they're kind of elected to look at the affairs that the politicians are doing, and they can say something about what this would mean for them. So that's actually, it's quite cool, because it means that you'll have young people actually influencing the local politicians. So that's a thing all over the country. And also in the north, of course, we have a Sami population, which is an indigenous group, and they also have a youth organization, Noer. And they're also like, doing stuff for young Sami people, and trying to participate in politics where it's relevant for them. So yeah, we do have that as well.
Those were the ones I was talking about. It's like the name totally slipped my mind. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Good. If Stian, I saw you unmute your microphone. Did you wanted to say something about this?
Oh, I just wanted to comment that maybe it was about the Sami population.
Yes, it was the Sami population.
Which is interesting in a Norwegian context, and also a civil society context, because the Sami population, of course, it's a part of Norway, but they also have their own parliament, which means that they have their own official system of governance in parallel with the Norwegian institutions. And this also is a result of the Sami population getting organized, and the first meetings of the population were not official in any way. They were gatherings that were essentially NGOs, but their purpose was to establish or to fight for the rights of this part of the population, which has been treated really poorly by the Norwegian government, unfortunately. So it's also something to know about Norwegian society and Norwegian civil society.
Thank you, thank you. Related to the challenges, I was also wanting to hear about some of the interests, let's say, of the civil society, because of course we are generalizing right now. We're not very specific, and because we don't have time to do that, but like in a general sphere, what are the Norwegian organizations actually interested in, especially from a partnership point of view? And I'm not talking necessarily with Romania. Like, what would be the vibe, let's say, in Norway today about, you know, interests of the civil society?
Yeah.
Would you like to take that? I mean, yeah.
I think, yeah, it's very hard to generalize about that, because the civil society is so diverse. So it really depends upon which kind of organization you ask. Some of the challenges that I was talking about earlier, I believe, are in some ways generalizable. And I think that almost everybody is now concerned with the corona crisis, and I think that maybe there is some interesting opportunities to cooperate within this completely new environment for NGOs, and that we could learn from each other. I mean, like now we have the acceptance for this kind of digital meetings has really increased. And I think that a lot of NGOs are currently experimenting and trying to learn new ways to do things with the restrictions that we have to follow. So this is maybe an area where it could be interesting to also cooperate. But I would also mention, and I think that Isa could say more about this, but today the world is facing a lot of challenges that are really global in nature and that we need to cooperate to solve. Climate change, we have to safeguard democracy, we have to stand strong for human rights. And I think that in the context of that, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, they are quite well known, I would say. At least they're starting to get better known in Norway, and could be, I mean, every NGO could find at least one, but probably several goals that they are in some way contributing to. And this could be a really good framework, I think, also for international cooperation.
Yeah, and we're working a bit about like Sustainable Development Goals. We're working with the organization and them, learning to know them and understanding how, not only like if they're working with environmental issues, of course, then they're doing something about Sustainable Development Goals, but also if they're working with completely other issues, then they might also be taking part of the goals. And we also have like the goal 16.7, which is ensure responsive, inclusive, participatory and representative decision making at all levels. And of course, that relates to every organization. So, I mean, that's kind of important, I think, that at this time that everyone's like learning that kind of language and learning about the fact that we're actually doing something. Everyone is doing something to ensure that we'll make these goals happening within the framework with until 2030. Yeah. So I think that's quite. I mean, it's also an issue because not everyone is working with politics at all. So they'll just be like, why is that important to us? But I think now they're starting to learn that they might be able to look at the goals and maybe find something for themselves as well. Yeah.
The idea of my question with the interest was like also to because Stian, you were saying as the challenges. I think you were also mentioning it from the study that you made, right, for the NGOs in the Corona times, right? Because you still did like a survey with the Norwegian organizations and to better understand what are their challenges. And I was like, for example, when you were saying like not everybody can participate anymore, and there is an increase in inequalities. Actually, my question was if the organizations in Norway tried to implement something new or tried to focus their attention on specific activities in this period that could, be continued in the next period, because the situation is not over for sure.
Yeah, we have seen that almost everybody are thinking about new ways of doing stuff, trying to connect with their members or their different target groups, and developing new ways to fulfill their purposes. But of course it's very broad. But to take one example that has a lot of focus right now in Norway is the like I mentioned, the economic inequality, and the consequence for particularly children and youth that are not able to participate in the leisure time activities or the other activities together with their friends. So this is something that I think a lot of organizations are becoming aware of. It has been a quite rapid development during the last 15 years. If you look at the graph, the number of children that grow up in relative poverty compared to the rest of the society. It's something that when I grew up, of course, there was also inequality. There always has been, but the magnitude is much larger now. We didn't really consider it that much a challenge for the organizations, but this is something that I believe now is a real challenge, and we have to work within the organizations to make sure that we are for everyone, and that the price of activities does not prohibit some people from participating. But also we have to work here with the government and with the local municipalities, because it's not something that is solvable from within each organization. So there needs to be support, financial support for the organizations so that they can keep their fees low. There needs to be taken special care for the people that will not even be able to participate even if the fee is low. So there has to be some basic kind of support for participation. And so this is something that a lot of organizations are working with now. And also it's not only about the money, it's also about getting the message out to people, being a good marketer, showing to all the different groups what our organization has to offer, and also to be able to actually include the people that are new to your organization in the organization, so that they can become active and become a part of the society. So there is a whole range of challenges that I think are important both to tackle politically, but also in organizational development, so that the organizations become more aware of the challenge, and that they also become aware of what role can they play in solving the challenge. And this is, of course, this kind of organizational development, it's always useful to be able to learn from someone else that has good experiences, or that has the view of an outsider, that can give you advice, that can challenge you. So this is something that I believe is very relevant to cooperate also across borders to achieve.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stian.
In addition to that, I would also like to add that we've been working with places to actually be for the activities to happen, like premises. It's not only about money, but the fact that if you don't have an office, if you don't really have a place to be and do the activities in the organization, then it's very difficult to be able to do anything, right? So we've been working with that as well, and we also see that during the corona crisis, that this is very difficult, because you'll have to have that social distancing, right? So that means that you'll have to have premises or offices that is bigger than you would usually use, because you'll have to be able to have 1 meter between everyone, right? So that's a problem, and especially with the youth organization, we see that that's a problem, where in the local chapters there's lots of organization not having lots of money, not having lots of places to actually be, and it's not every school is not it's not like every school is saying yes to have those different activities there as well. So yeah, that's an issue that we're working with. Yeah.
Thank you. Because we have a little time left, just like because one of my final questions was related to how you would see, from your perspective, a cooperation with from the civil society point of view in possible projects that could be funded under the Active Citizens Fund. And of course, we have been talking about topics during the conversation, the rights protection and how we can pass that to, local public authorities. How do we have management of local entities at national level that could be transferred to local spheres? How you can involve young people into political activities? How you can make a more, a stronger membership base, and how you can develop it so that people can participate more. So we have tackled it a little bit, of course, throughout the conversation. But would you say that from your perspective, so from perspective of the NGOs that are in your network, Stian, or the NGOs that are in your network, Isa, do you see them especially interested in something in particular when it comes to partnership, and of course if they are interested in partnering with this part of Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of different organizations that are passionate about, participating, or like having activities in other countries as well. We do have, I've been mentioning the youth parties a lot, but we do have youth parties having projects in the eastern part of Europe. So we know that there are lots of people actually interested in changing ideas, and I think that makes us better, that we learn to know how other people are working with their issues in their countries as well. And also, of course, we've got organizations that are international, like Red Cross, as we've been mentioning, that of course you've got Red Cross in your country as well. Yeah. So international cooperation is very important, I think, because these kind of issues that we're working with, it's not really local, it's also international, it's also global, and we can't let the border stop us from cooperating and working together. So I think that's very important. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you. Stian, some thoughts?
Yeah. Well, if I were to give an advice, I would say just to get familiar with the purposes of some of the organizations, and then to be creative about how they could a cooperation could strengthen the purpose, because I think every NGO is always interested in how can we better fulfill the purpose we have, whether that is to provide service or advice to people that are blind, or whether it is to promote a particular kind of activity for children and youth, or yeah, anything. And I believe that you can always find something to cooperate with others about that will strengthen your purpose. It will give you new ideas. It will expand your network. It will spur innovation. And yeah, so well, it's hard to say that this one topic is something that will trigger everyone. I think that there is something in the purpose of every NGO that could be a hook to start a kind of a fruitful cooperation.
Good. Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you, Isa. Thank you, Stian. We are very, very close to ending our meeting. Thank you for coming and sharing with us some of the things from Norway. We really do believe that beyond, the money, because we're not talking only about the money, even if it's a financing program, we are actually we strongly believe that, like what you were saying, that when we get together and we develop things together, we can actually build a lot of interesting things. And we had a lot of examples of best practices from the previous programs where, Romanian and Norwegian organizations came together, and actually they developed quite the projects which are already that are also continuing in this time, so they were sustainable and they were effective, and they had added value for the people who were involved in the project and after the project. So we really do believe that we can do things together, and we can learn also from each other. And yeah, we hope that we have as many partnership projects as possible for the coming years that can deal with the things that we have been discussing here in this conversation. Good. So thank you very much. And yeah, have a lovely week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
Ciao. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.